Hi, Russ Mitchell from the Channel 3 studios as part of our continuing series of Meet the Candidates. Our guest today is Eric Brewer, the former mayor of East Cleveland. Eric, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let me start by asking everybody I ask who sits in that seat, why do you want to be mayor of Cleveland?
Well, a couple of things. Tamir Rice's great-grandmother was my vice president of East Cleveland City Council, and that was Mildred Brewer. We both share the same last name, and when he was killed in the city of Cleveland by the two officers, it hurt me very personally. The second thing that happened was Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams, the 137-bullet slaughter behind Heritage Middle School. That was where my brothers and sisters went to middle school. It was next to a $62 million development at the McGregor Nursing Home. So for me to see those types of things happening and to know that I had left an order for East Cleveland Police that if another police department caused the death of another East Cleveland resident or a death in East Cleveland, they were to be arrested, and to not see that happen when those that horror took place in that city, it just kind of motivated me to say, we've got to do something about these the leadership in Cleveland.
I think you've answered this question, but let me just ask it this way. What is job one? If you're mayor of Cleveland, what's job one for you?
Well, of course, the first day is to find out where all the keys are, make sure all your employees that you've brought in are sent to their offices. But some of the things that I'm going to take a look at would be putting physicians on EMS squads. When Huron Hospital closed, what happened is that we lost the #1 gunshot wound trauma center in the state of Ohio. And so what's happening now is that people are dying on their way to the hospital or dying before they get to the hospital because they're not getting the type of medical treatment that they need. So I want to put physicians on EMS squads. I want to look at putting mobile clinics in the city. We have a lot of elderly people, mentally handicapped people who need help in their homes, and we just don't have that type of service here. And with the cuts that are being discussed in Obamacare, there's a 1953 law that allows city councils to pass a property tax for $1 per thousand. So if you own a $50,000 home, it's $50 a year for free medical care. And we just have not kind of massaged that 63, almost 64-year-old law to implement it in Cleveland as a way of increasing the quality of life for the people here.
As I said, you're a former mayor of East Cleveland. When you look at everything you've done in the community, you've been very vocal. You've been out there even when you weren't in office. Why decide at this point to go back into that arena?
Because of what's going on in the city of Cleveland. Frank and I were friends. We both went into office together in 2006. We met 1 month after we took office to just have some discussions about mutual issues that involve the city. And the one thing that I saw in Frank at that time that seems to continue today is that he's not much of a reader. And so a lot of the problems that I see with the city, the police officers who've been committing crimes in the community being returned to their jobs instead of prosecuted, the way services are going in the neighborhoods, the lack of attention to people in the neighborhoods, the abandoned homes, the streets, the bus services. Your uncle and my father were the first Negro bus drivers for the bi-state system in St. Louis. And because of that, you know, I grew up on buses. And I grew up in Cleveland where my dad was a CTS driver. So we have more local services here. And so we just don't seem to have the attention to the services that people need.
What's the biggest obstacle for you as you embark on this? What's the thing you have to do, you think, to get your message out? What's the biggest hurdle you have to face?
I think the biggest hurdle is that the media has not really covered in the past my administration in the city of East Cleveland. To know that I was the most successful mayor in the city's 30-year history of mayors. I'm the only mayor that over the past 30 years plus kept the city out of fiscal emergency for all 4 years. I cut crime 40 to 75%. I wrote the the neighborhood stabilization program grant that allowed for the $2.2 million to come in to knock down 150 homes. When I left East Cleveland, Huron Hospital was there. Huron, the apartment building across the street, terrace had been paved. All of the equipment was working, fire trucks, service truck, EMS trucks, 4,000 tons of salt was left in the garage, and we had 280 employees working full-time, not this abomination that's taking place that has cut the services in the community. So without the media having, over the last 12 years or so, covered my administration the way it should have been, I have to go out and explain that all over to people who might think and connect me to what's taking place now.
What do you want people to know about you that perhaps they don't know now?
I think that what they'll understand from me is that I'll be a different type of mayor. Having been a journalist and an investigative journalist first, I'm literate. I know how to read. I read a lot. I read everything. And I think that in leadership, particularly in government, you have to go by your charter, your ordinances, the administrative code, the Ohio Revised Code, because that's what we in elected office decide or swear to uphold to in our oaths of office. So I want to make sure that we get back to governing the way the law requires Cleveland to be governed.
A lot of people who sit in that seat have never run for office before. The last two folks who have sat there, in fact, are running for office for the first time. As I said, you're a known quantity.
Yes.
Your supporters say you're aggressive and bold. Your detractors say you can be alienating and abrasive. What do you say to people who like your ideas, but may look at you as abrasive and alienating, and may think, I say, I can't vote for this guy at this point? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say to them that if Huron Hospital had taken place, or they had talked about closing Huron Hospital while I was the mayor of East Cleveland, and we were actually talking about expanding it, there would have been a war to keep it from being closed. Now, do you want a mayor who's going to sit back and allow the hospital to be closed, or do you want a mayor who's going to fight to keep the hospital open? Do you want a mayor who's going to be passive about police misconduct, or do you want a mayor who's going to be aggressive about police misconduct and to demand that there is constitutional compliance in the police department? I think it's horrible that a black president had to send a black attorney general to a predominantly black city to tell a black mayor and a black police chief that their people were being terrorized by police officers under their supervision. And I think you have to have that kind of mindset to go in and fight for the people. So if you're abrasive and I'm ticking people off, it means I'm doing my job.
Eric Brewer, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Russ.
Sure.
Take care.
You too.